Have you ever been playing Left 4 Dead and wonder how the survivors get from one place to the next? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be tackling that exact question. And as in today's video, I'm going to be focusing only on the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors, their maps, and their locations. If you guys are interested in the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors, I have a whole nother video. You can find a link to that in the description, or you can go to my channel. I think it was but if you guys would like me to combine both of these videos into one, let me know so you guys can just watch all the maps, all the places in one video without having to go. But let me know if you guys want that and I can make a new video. With that being said, I had my wisdom teeth pulled out, so please bear with me for this video. The pain is really bad. I might talk slow, I might trip up on my words. I apologize. But with that being said, let's figure out how the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors get to each map in Left 4 Dead 2. If you guys enjoy, please subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Like the video, and without further ado, let's begin. So starting out on the Dead Center campaign, the survivors find their way onto a rooftop, and this is where they begin the entire journey of Left 4 Dead 2. But just like in Left 4 Dead 1, what's the context? How do people get here? And how do specifically our survivors get to this location and form a group of 4? Well, it's never shown explicitly the point that each one of these survivors meet, including Rochelle, Ellis, Nick, and Coach. However, from the intro cutscene, we can infer that they just met in this building somewhere and then made their way onto this rooftop.
Who the hell puts an evac station up 30 flights of goddamn stairs?
Come on, Coach. Maybe the helicopter. Maybe it's made of chocolate.
Hey, where is everybody? Hello?
Oh, this is not happening.
Anyone here?
Aren't they supposed to be saving our asses?
Looks like there's been a change of plans.
Once you start the map, all the survivors are standing here, looking off this edge, complaining about how the helicopter is flying away. What are they gonna do? As the survivors figure out what they're gonna do, they group up, they grab some weapons, grab some healing packs, there's some melees, there's some pistols. And an interesting fact about this map is they never put primary weapons here because they added melee weapons in Left 4 Dead 2, so this is their way of kind of showing that off. The survivors make their way down the hotel into the burning area, then make their way onto the streets, eventually finding a mall in which they explore the mall, and they eventually find a Jimmy Gibbs race car which they figure they'll use to escape the map. They search the area around the Jimmy Gibbs car, which allows them to find some gas cans which they can use to fill up said car, and once they have enough gas in the car, that allows them to leave and continue their journey. So let's go there now. Once the survivors make their way to the last map on Dead Center, they find their way into this kind of back roomsy area. Not that back rooms, this back room. As they open the safe room door, they pass by some bathrooms before making their way past some dead bodies, turning right, turning left, until they eventually see an elevator which leads them downwards. Once in the elevator, they discuss their plan, and like I said earlier, that requires them to grab gas cans in order to drive the car. Once the survivors grab the last can, they go ahead and put it into the car, and then they can successfully leave the map. And with that, Dead Center is complete. Now the next map we have is a intermediary quote-unquote DLC map that was placed in between the other map, which is Dark Carnival. And the map that's in between both Dead Center and Dark Carnival is The Passing, which like I said was added at a later point in time. And as we view the beginning and end of that map, we'll see exactly how that plays out. So let's go to there now. So starting at the beginning of the Passing campaign, the survivors get out of this car and can either talk to, I believe, a few of the survivors. In this case, we're talking to Francis here. I think you can either get Francis or Zoe, doesn't really matter though. They talk to one of the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors. They say, hey, we need to get across this bridge, can you lower it? One of the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors will say, hey, sure, that's possible, you just need to get to the other side first. That gives them a mission right off the bat and you continue the map. However, looking at the vehicle you start next to, this is obviously the car that we just left in Dead Center. However, you can see some of these battle damage scars, and I think it looks really interesting. I really like how they added these subtle details. It really brings immersion to the max, you know. An interesting little fact about this area is if you look around, there's actually no discernible place to indicate where they came from. It's most likely this area, but how is that possible if there's a giant gate here? Like, they couldn't come from this way either because this is blocked. They couldn't come from down here because, you know, that doesn't make any sense. sense. So the only actual place would be this, but again, this area is blocked. I get for gameplay reasons it has to be blocked, but I wish they would have thought about that before placing this here. But I digress. As the survivors make their way through the passing campaign, they make their way through a water-filled cityscape area, eventually making their way down into a underground sewer system, coming out of it, and ending up in the sacrifice port map, but in this case, it's in the passing, so it's a Left 4 Dead 2 version of that Left 4 Dead 1 map. So let's go there now. As the survivors make their way out of the sewer system, they make their way into this room, and then they make their way out of this room, and they eventually can talk to the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors on an elevated platform, much closer to the bridge. Francis, you think you funny. So once the survivors talk to the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors, they can press this button, and the elevator will bring them down. And similar to the last crescendo event, we gotta gather gas cans in order to fill something up. In this case, it's a generator. So let's go do that now. So once the survivors have grabbed up all the gas cans, they put in the last one before having to defend from a tank and have to wait for the bridge to drop. And another interesting fact is the entire time the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors are down here, the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors are defending them. You can see Lewis up there in the turret, and Zoe and Francis will periodically throw down some materials. Like they just threw down a pipe bomb. I saw them throw an adrenaline. So once the tank appears, we gotta make a mad dash, and then the survivors eventually find the car, so they continue their mission.
Where? At the mall?
And with that, the passing campaign is completed. Now the story is pretty interesting, and I really like how they use that car specifically. They don't use some weird method to get around it. It's pretty straightforward, like the entire rest of Left 4 Dead 2 is, with its beginning and end points. They did a way better job than Left 4 Dead 1. But with that being said, let's move on to Dark Carnival, the next map in the timeline. So starting off at the beginning of Dark Carnival, we can see once again there's a Jimmy Gibbs race car here, and this is where they have to unfortunately leave the car. As Ellis explains, he can't drive over a roadblock, which makes sense. How are you going to get a car past this? Another interesting part about this area is similar to the passing, the area where the car would have come from is blocked off by some asset, and I get it's for gameplay design, but they could have put like maybe like a crashed tree here or something. But like a gate, like bro, what did they do? Just move the gate? I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's an interesting detail to point out. As the survivors get their stuff out of the car, they lay some of it on the ground. You can see some med packs here along with some firearms. The survivors weapon up and they continue on the highway. After they pass the highway, they make their way to the fairgrounds, in which they can play some carnival games if they choose so, eventually leading them to a coaster, which they climb up on top of it, follow the coaster until it leads them to a safe room, in which they pass by some bumper cars, eventually making their way past some barns, in which they have to run through a very hard crescendo event, bolting it into the safe room past a bunch of fairground zombies, and that leads them to the safe room right before the concert. So let's head there now. As I said, once the survivors make their way into this safe room, there's a bunch of lore that you can read up on this wall if you like. There's a bunch of posters advertising the Midnight Riders. So as the survivors get ready, they leave the safe room, they pass by a bunch of bodies, they pass by some more restrooms, they pass by some tables, which in kind of a weird place if you think about it. And as the survivors make their way out of this back room type area, they have to walk up here, turn on a few things, and then start the concert. So once the survivors hold out for long enough, hopefully the helicopter will arrive if they in fact survive, and it can either spawn right here or over there. It looks like we're getting this spawn point. So the survivors make their way, they jump into this helicopter, completing the map. So as they finish Dark Carnival, this will eventually lead them to Swamp Fever. However, Swamp Fever start and Dark Carnival finish are two completely different vehicles. However, you're going to see that we're going to start in a train. So how does that connect? We'll find out in the next section. Let's head to Swamp Fever now. Starting off in Swamp Fever, you can see that we're in a train. Now this might strike you because we just saw that we left Dark Carnival in a helicopter, as I just mentioned. Now to explain this is going to take a little bit of some time. There was some time constraints that I found while I was researching, that at the last minute they switched the Dark Carnival finale from a train to a helicopter. It seems to me that that theory might have some plot holes, because if they're making their way to a concert, how are you going to use like light, sound, and noise to signal a train, you would need a train track nearby, which is a little confusing. My personal headcanon is that the helicopter probably just crashed somewhere, and then along the way, while either they were exploring or maybe just walking somewhere, they found this train which allowed them to hop on it. They jumped inside this car, and once this train got derailed, they opened up this train car, and that's when they begin the Swamp Fever campaign. With that being said, they make their way through the swamp, they make their way through a bunch of water as well, eventually making it to Shoddy Town. I genuinely thought it was Shoddy Town when I was a kid, but they make their way to Shanty Town, and once they make their way past the Shanty Town, they make their way to a plantation house, and once there, they have to hold out for a rescue mission. So let's go there now. So, like I said, once the survivors make their way into the safe room, this is like a little shack or like a little cabin area right before the last map, and a really interesting thing about this area is it's really bright and it's really beautiful. It's kind of like a contrast to the previous chapters, as the last ones were very dark, gloomy, and wet. That light contrast gives the survivors some hope. There's a pretty long journey that the survivors have to make to the plantation house, but it's not too hard, and once we get there, I'll explain the finale. So once the survivors make their way past the plantation house, they go all throughout it, going up, going down. You can find a bunch of loot in there with some health packs, some ammo, some more weapons. If they come out here and they go through this plantation area with all these plants, you can come over here and there's actually a signaler here, a radio.
I'm standing by a big gate.
After they talk to the man on the radio, they find out his name is Virgil and he's driving a boat and he's been out on the water for quite some time. So the survivors must hold their ground until Virgil arrives, and hopefully Virgil will pick these guys up. So once the survivors hold out for long enough, Virgil will blow open this door. Once Virgil blows open this door, the survivors can run through the debris, go down this port area, hopefully avoid tanks, and eventually make their way onto the boat. And with that, Swamp Fever is complete. Now, like the car, this boat is going to be used as an intermediary between multiple maps. And this is pretty cool because it adds much needed continuity in between maps, unlike Left 4 Dead 1 had. Left 4 Dead 1 originally had a bunch of gaps which were later filled in by Left 4 Dead 2 campaign DLC. It adds some continuity, some weight to the vehicle and the character driving that vehicle, which is Virgil. Everyone loves Virgil. But with that being said, we're going to use Virgil and we're going to head over to Hard Rain. So let's go to there now. So making our way to Hard Rain, Virgil will drop the survivors off here, in which they have to scavenge. They can find some melee weapons, they can find some pistols. Basically, Virgil is out of gas, so he tasks the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors with getting some more. And once they hopefully get some gas, he'll come back, grab them, and get them on their way. So as the survivors pass down Burger Tank, they go into this 5-star establishment, which I do say so myself. It looks like this girl had one too many Burger Tank burgers. That's an old throwback to a different video. Let me know if you guys got that. But this is a really interesting set piece specifically because these assets are never really used. I mean, that sign is used in a bunch of places. As for the inside, it's a little bit interesting. It's a little bit unique. But the survivors pass their way through Milltown, eventually making their way to a sugar mill, in which they eventually are able to find the gas. Once they grab the gas, they have to turn around and make their way through the map. But this time, it's a rainy version. And as you guys know about me, if you watch my content for a while, I love water. I love water maps. I don't know what about it that I really like, but as the survivors make their way through both Milltown and Sugar Mill, they will make their way back to Burger Tank, instead flooded, like I said, but they will be using this sign to signal Virgil to come pick them up, and then they'll give Virgil the gas, which will allow them to continue their journey. The whole point of this campaign, like I said. So let's fast forward now. So once the survivors make their way into this little cottage, this little home right before the Burger Tank shop, they can gear up, they can grab some grenades, they can grab some ammo, they can grab some health packs, but they open this door realizing that, oh shit, this area is also flooded. But no need to worry, as all the survivors have the gas, so all they'll need to do now is signal Virgil with the sign, and once Virgil picks them up, they'll be on their merry way. So once the survivors have held out for long enough, killed enough zombies, killed enough tanks, they can make their way down this white car, through this water area, and back onto this port, and you can see Virgil has found the Burger Tank sign, and he has followed us here. And with that, Hard Rain is complete. So once the survivors have successfully given the gas to Virgil, he refuels the boat, which allows him to make his way over towards the parish campaign, which is where we'll see he eventually has to abandon the survivors. But it's a bittersweet end for Virgil as our survivors get to continue the mission. Mission being making their way towards the military, which is, for better or for worse, definitely a plan, but we'll see how that turns out later for our survivors.
Virgil ain't going no further, but y'all can make it to the bridge from here.
Thanks, brother.
Good luck now. I'm gonna go look for the survivors.
Okay, so we're on the wrong side of the river. Things could be worse. All we have to do is run the freeway.
So once the survivors are dropped off by Virgil, he explains that he's gonna go off and help more survivors. Godspeed, Virgil. Hopefully he didn't die a horrible death. But the survivors gather themselves and they make their way towards the opposite end, trying to get across the bridge and meet up with an evac spot that the military is holding up. As the survivors make their way through the parish campaign, they go through the beginning waterfront area before making it to a park, and then they later make their way through a cemetery, then continuing throughout more of the city, more of the back alleys, more of the streets, eventually making it to the bridge we talked about. And like I said, this bridge is going to lead them to the military. That's why they're going to this bridge in the first place. So let's go there now. So when the survivors eventually make it to the bridge, they come to this area. They have to climb up this ladder, which leads them to this starting area, in which they make their way to this dead guy and are able to talk to the military. Now, important thing to note, there are a bunch of dead zombies, but more importantly, dead people all throughout the parish. Actions like this, along with the bombing, is what leads the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors into distrusting the military. And we know that they distrust the military because we can hear Nick as he will start to voice a lot of his concerns, usually saying things like they're gonna line us up and kill us.
Stop! Don't bomb the bridge! 57. That's coming from the bridge. Last buzzer. Stand down. Stand down. Bridge. Identify yourself.
My name's Nick. There's 4 of us on the west end of the bridge.
Bridge. Are you immune?
We are not infected.
Negative, Bridge. Are you immune? Have you encountered the infected?
Yeah, you could say that.
57. Are you equipped for carriers? Affirmative, Propagator. Bridge, we have pulled out of that sector. Your only remaining pickup is available on the other end of the bridge. Our last chopper is leaving in 10 minutes. We need to lower the span and get across the bridge. God be with you.
Sure, give us a few minutes.
Good luck.
Let's lower that bridge.
So once the survivors are done talking with this guy, their conversation is actually pretty interesting. As the military exclaims that they know about carriers, they don't specifically say they know about carriers, but they definitely know of them because they ask the chopper if he's equipped for carriers. So most likely, the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors after this campaign will either be imprisoned or unfortunately killed. But once the survivors lower down the bridge, they have to make a mad dash towards the chopper, eventually finishing off the current story of Left 4 Dead 2. As the survivors run through the bridge, they jump down this area, making their way through this CEDA evac site. They avoid the tanks, and then they jump into this chopper, eventually finishing off the parish. Unfortunately, like I said, their fate is probably more grim than it is bright. That's the beauty of Valve, is they never continue their game, so we don't know. But let's go to a recap where I go over each map, how they get to each map, the vehicles that they use, and hopefully that'll sort of sum up and reflect on this entire journey of the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors at least. So let's go ahead and do that now. So this is the part of the video where I wanted to sum up each map and see how Left 4 Dead 2 as a whole connects, going from each beginning to each end. So at the intro cutscene, that leads us to Dead Center, and then at Dead Center they make their way to the mall and they find the Jimmy Gibbs car. They then use the Jimmy Gibbs car to go to the passing, in which they lower the bridge, they go around, they're able to re-access their Jimmy Gibbs car, they drive through the bridge, eventually making their way to Dark Carnival, and then at the end of Dark Carnival they have to to find a helicopter, which supposedly crashes, is my personal headcanon. Then from the helicopter, they go to a train, and at the beginning of Swamp Fever, they start on that train, and then as they make their way through Swamp Fever, when they get to the end, that's when they meet Virgil. They take Virgil's boat to Hard Rain. Virgil drops them off, they get gas, they come back, they signal him, they get back on the boat, and then from Hard Rain, Virgil takes them to the parish. Virgil leaves the survivors there to go help other survivors, and then our survivors make their way to the bridge, in which they find the military helicopter, which takes them to some undesignated sort of mystery uncertain fate. So that's the entire timeline of Left 4 Dead 2. Like I said, if you guys want me to combine both videos, let me know down in the comments below. I love to hear your guys' feedback. If you're interested in the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors, I do have that video already up on my channel, so you can look at my previous 2 videos. I think it's one of those. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you genuinely enjoyed, please subscribe, like the video, leave some love down in the comment section below. It really helps me. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.